the one shift that I made, which kind of somehow started it all, this is so simple, but instead of doing like positive affirmations, I am healthy, right? I started saying like we in the beginning of it. And as soon as I did that, I don't know what happened. I think it's somehow in the subconscious mind. I just started to understand people better. I somehow started to realize like, wait, this is, it was even unexplainable to me. Okay. And I think that's part of the beauty of it.
Welcome to It's Not What You Think, the podcast that takes you on a transformative journey to rewrite your story of greatness and reawaken your soul's purpose. I'm your host, Celine DaCosta, a subconscious mind expert, master coach, and believer in the limitless power and magic that lives within all of us. My intention in this podcast is to propel you into your next level of success so that you are free to create the life that your heart most desires. Through deep, actionable insights, personal stories, and world-class guests, I'll provide you with the tools, strategies, and resources you need to unlock the fullest expression of who you're meant to be in this lifetime so that you can consciously design a reality that is beyond what you could have ever dreamed of. Join me on this journey to personal growth and evolution, and let's live our lives in accordance with our highest soul's calling. This podcast is your weekly check-in to help this path become more simple, obtainable, and fun. Thank you for tuning in today, and now let's dive in. Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to It's Not What You Think. I have a dear friend on with me today. Her name is Lauren Tickner, and let me tell you, this woman is impressive. So I'll give you the lowdown on how successful Miss Lauren is, and then I'll tell you about how and why I love her, and then we're going to dive in. But first and foremost, hi, Lauren.
Well, that should I say?
Well,
we're both in Spain.
Yeah, we are both in Spain. You ever get an intro like that? It's about to get better. So Lauren, the formal intro is Lauren became a millionaire at the age of 23. And this lady has spoken on some serious stages, including Alex Hormozy, Robert Kiyosaki, and Gary Vee. She is just a social media wizard. And what I love about this lady is that she's on a mission to help over 100 business owners collect $1 million in cash from new clients this year. So that's her formality. But let's tell you about how I met Lauren. It was actually around 6 years ago. And I remember this was the time where I was also doing my social media influencer stuff. And Lauren reached out to me to interview me on her podcast. And at the time I was like, who's this lady? She's doing fitness stuff. Like I didn't really know, but I liked her vibe. And so we got on the podcast, we vibed together and just stayed in touch. And then I gradually saw this woman just grow and expand and expand. I've been following her journey since then. I was just recently with her in London just a couple of months ago where we got the idea to do this interview and just have been absolutely blown away and impressed with the business that she's built, but more than that, with how she's built it, with the levels of integrity, values, and just like you're the real deal. And I know this is going to get unveiled in today's episode, but I'm so grateful for that because it's hard these days. It's difficult to find business owners who care, who operate in integrity, and who are in the level of alignment that I believe that you are from what I've observed. So I'm super excited to dive into your brain and unpack things. But before we do, I'm going to hand it over to you. Can you share more about yourself? What are you most passionate about right now? And what makes you excited to be here?
Wow. Well, thank you for the intro. And I remember when I first saw your stuff was because you were a digital nomad and you were one of the few people who I was seeing was running a business while traveling. And at the time, I don't think I was even fully doing that yet. And so I connected with you and it was interesting because when we first got in touch, you were all about the business. And seeing your evolution as well has been really interesting because you went from someone who was, I think you were mainly doing PR back then, right? You were doing PR and programs, etc. And I also noticed your shift over the years, which was, it was very, very cool to see. Maybe you were always very, I'd say spiritual back then. I don't know. Honestly, you can tell me. But I think that was one of the things that like inspired us to get reconnected, I guess, because everyone goes on different journeys at different speeds and different times. And I think my background over the last few years was very much in the okay, let's hustle, let's make it work, let's, build a business, etc. However, especially in the last 2 years, I was really reconnecting with okay, who am I? What do I want beyond just like the business side of things? And so that's a little bit more as to how I think we got connected. But on my side, what was interesting about having this conversation here today is I think people often misconstrue what it takes to actually, and I think success really is about just like being able to do the things that you want to be doing and feeling the way that you want to feel on a continuous basis, right? Because you can have a lot of money, but you can be quite empty. And so I think that it'll be interesting and the way that you do things about like, okay, how do I think? And what are the things that allow me to actually what I do define as success? It's different to other people, right? So I think it's going to be an interesting conversation that we can have today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and let's dive in. So I want to get into the brain of the 23-year-old Lauren before we dive into your evolution of who you are, who you've become, and what you've learned about business since then. I love to backtrack and get into the brain of a former version of you who's like, I'm gonna make shit happen, and then goes on to build a seven-figure business. So what
Mm.
happens in what's happening in the brain, in the state of being of a young, 20 something year old who goes off and builds something of that caliber? Can you take us back to like what even drove you? Did you do it did you know that you were going to build that, or were you like, I'm just fucking around and see what happens? Like, if you were to rewind and give us a snapshot, what was going on in your mind? Were you driven to prove yourself? Did you feel like you had to do something because of something that was happening in your life? Like, what was going on that made you like, snap, I'm going to get this done?
There were a handful of moments. The first one that I remember vividly is when I was working in this asset management job. I was 18 and I was just honestly so bored. I was so bored because every day was the same thing. And I was obsessed with fitness back then. I still really, I love fitness. I'm still doing it every day. And there was this gym that had just opened opposite this big, floor to ceiling windows, office type of thing, hundreds of people in there hustling on their computers all day. And I just saw people throughout the day walking into the gym. And I just remember thinking, that's all I want to do. I don't care about this dream that I used to have, which was I wanted to be the CEO of like a big corporate bank or something. That was my goal, to be the CEO, a female CEO of an asset management firm. That was
Mm.
my specific goal. And then I realized in that moment, well, actually, I just want to have my own business because I saw my dad had a very small business, maybe he does $250,000 a year. He had that since I was born. And I always saw that he could come and pick me up from school whenever he wanted to. And he had a freedom of time, which I didn't have when I was doing that job. So I phoned up the university that I was meant to get started with in a few months. And they told me, well, you can't do, I wanted to do a exercise science degree. They told me you can't do that because you don't have a science background. And I said, well, okay, what can I do? And they said, check the website and have a look. And I found on the first page, UK's #1 business degree. Phoned them back and I was like, hey, I basically sold them the concept that because even though I didn't have the specific thing that I needed to have, like a business studies thing, whatever they call it, I didn't have that. But I explained to them I was working in this job and I managed to get on that thing. And so that was the first moment for me that I knew that I couldn't just do something normal. And at that point, I had to just change the way that I operated my entire life. Because up until, let's say, about the age of 16, I did everything I could fit in. Everything. So my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, he's disabled. And so whenever we would go out with my family, he'd be in a wheelchair, right? So we push him around and everyone's staring at us all the time. And so because I had that, I just wanted to fit in. Right. So all the girls from my schools like dyeing their hair blonde, so skinny, going partying, all this stuff. So I was doing that too. Like quite literally for years. Even up until 2 years ago, I was still dyeing my hair blonde. I didn't even realize that it was because of that. And anyway, I the first pivot for me is okay, well, all these people around me are sat in this job none of them are happy. Like the dude who was sat next to me was telling me, oh yeah, this year we can't go on a holiday with our family because my daughter, something happened to her car and he had to pay to get that thing fixed and he didn't have the right insurance or whatever. And I was thinking, wow, this guy's been in this job for 15 years and he's sitting right by me. Like, if I stay on this path, where am I going to be in 15 years? And it was only when I started to ask myself the questions that I just had pushed under before, because I was just doing what I thought I had to do in order to get quote unquote success, aka money, or even more than money, prestige, because I was getting paid like 1.2K a month with that job, right? It was nothing. So that was the first noticing moment. And so right after that happened, from there, when I actually got into business, I was just doing really just the things that I liked and that I enjoyed, and I wasn't really trying to monetize it actually. And only when I saw somebody else who, this is very sort of surface level, right? Hadn't started doing any of the work on myself, except basic personal development stuff, like not hitting snooze on the alarm. I saw this one guy, his name's Iman Gardzi. I don't know if you know who he is, but basically he's super famous now on YouTube, right? And he's a cool guy, really great guy, like really genuine, like from what you see on his YouTube, some people think wrong about him. He's awesome. Like, I've known him since he was like 11, right? And he made this course about building a personal brand. And I was like, what's he doing? And I have 20,000 more followers than him. If he is, that's so can I. And so I think back then it was just pure naivety on what it actually takes in order to be successful with stuff. So yeah, those are the first few things, but I don't know how deep you want me to go with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that since you were quite young in your teens, yes, this is the story as old as time, is like this pressure that we feel to fit in, to do what everything is doing. But there's a moment where there's that niggly feeling, and I recognize it in myself when you're speaking into it, because I had that in my mid-20s of something is off here. This is not there's a mental map of what I thought I wanted my life to be and to look like. And now I'm in it and I'm seeing the evidence. I'm seeing the guy at the cubicle. I'm living, I'm getting up, clocking into work. And this is not a match for the thing I thought this thing would be. And at that moment, something happens in the brain of this person, of us, this high level achiever, that is like, hold on, there's another way. There's got to be another way. And what I'm hearing is that for you, what you clicked in your brain was, that other way is me starting my own business. Starting my own business because it creates a level of freedom. Actually, you tell me really quick, because what? Like when you were saying, I need to start my own business because ...
I
In
wanted
that
to just call
level.
all the shots. Yeah, like I don't. Okay, I was thinking about this the other day too, because I vividly remember where I was, and I vividly remember being on the phone, walking around the office, because it was a massive office, right? There was this whole space where no one else could hear what you were saying.
Mhm.
And I just remember telling the university, no, like, I am going to be really good on this business degree because I've had experience in the real world now. And I know I'll be able to create a really, really good business because I've also got this fitness stuff going on. Like, this was basically a decade ago now.
Mhm.
Okay. This
Mhm.
was in the early days of like the e-commerce world and the influencer marketing stuff.
Mhm.
And so for me, it was just, I was connecting dots, and the only possible dot that I knew to connect was what I had seen from my dad. And I'm so grateful that he had not done anything else in his life except that, because that's what allowed me to see, well, he's got time freedom and a degree, a level of financial freedom, right? Not like the most richest person in the world, but he has the ability to make the decisions that he wants to make on a daily basis. Like, he used to take 2 days off every week from work to go, and he loves play pigeon shooting, right? He loves that with his friends. He would go and do that twice a week. And so that was what I wanted. I wanted to be able to choose what I wanted to do and dictate my own shots, because they were just bossing me around all the time, right?
Mhm.
I'm like the youngest person they've ever hired. And I'm so grateful that it happened in that order, because if it hadn't happened in that order, if I'd have gone to university at the normal age, 18, when most people go, in the UK at least, and if I have not done that extra year in the job, then, well, who knows what would have happened to me, right? I probably would have gone down a normal path, because I would have got further indoctrinated by the people in the university who are going out to do the parties and all this and that, which is great. Like, go party as much as you want. But if it's your choice. It was never my choice. I never liked partying or drinking. But when I was like 15, 16, I was always drinking a lot because everybody around me was too. I was getting like wasted, blackout drunk all the time because that's what everyone was doing. And I really hated it. But I thought I liked it because they liked it. And I wanted to fit in. And so I brainwashed myself, quite literally brainwashed myself to try and be just like those people. And so when I was in this job, I just so vividly remember thinking, wow, everyone here is like overweight. Everyone here is unhappy. A lot of them were not in healthy relationships because they would gossip and bitch and moan to me all the time. Because I was the new person there. And so they felt like they could do that. And so I was like, well, if everyone's all like this and that's what's normal, then why do I want to be normal? And so then I kind of just decided to just be weird and, myself, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing here is, one, there was a deep desire and need for freedom that was identified. And number two
Definitely.
is you believed in yourself.
Mm. I
There was
think,
a
I think,
belief that it was possible for you.
naively, yeah.
But here's the thing. Oh my God, I just got chills when you said that. Naively, I was naive too when I thought I could pull this shit off. And then we did.
And you did it.
Right. Exactly. So it's important because even when we look at the mechanics, right, of like what does it take like for even to get to the space of like down the path, down the road you go before you got to the quote unquote results that you have. You went somewhere
Mhm.
and you had to think a certain way and you needed to believe in certain things for you to get there. And I say that because, for example, when I work with my clients, when I coach them, what I realize is that, highly successful beings, highly successful individuals, and the very clear pattern is that they were like hell bent on achieving their success. And there's something to be
Mhm.
said that a lot of time that when you zoom into hell bent, and you zoom in and you zoom in and you zoom in, what you see is a lot of unresolved trauma and a lot of like needing to prove the self, which we'll dive into it in a bit. I need to prove myself. I need to do this because I was never this. Like there's shadow, and there are pieces that are unresolved. But on the other side of that, there's also a deeper calling towards a mission. There's also a deeper
Mhm.
calling towards, I know I'm meant for more. And I know that there's something that I need to contribute on this planet that's bigger than that. And it's always fascinating to see when this hits us, and unfortunately, and there's a lot of people in the world who spend their entire life not having that kind of awakening. But there's a lot of people in the world, a lot who are listening to this episode right now, who are either have woken up, are in the process of waking up, or about to get their cosmic kick by listening to me. um, but you know what I mean? It's that, and it's important to see, like, because this need for freedom, Lauren, it's innate. It's part of our spirit. Is that we want to be free and we desire to be free, but unfortunately, most of us have grown up in a construct, in a social construct that has been
Mhm.
designed to cage us, to keep us, like what you said, doing everything we can to blend in, to follow the rules, and to do and be what we're meant to do and be based on the country that we grew up, the culture we grew up, and whatever the rules are in that place and space. But there's actually something bigger than that. And you know that. And I know that, which is why we're having this conversation. And the ingredient as well is that there comes a point where not only do we desire freedom, like in your journey, you desired freedom, but there was a touch point where there's something in you that says, I believe this is possible for me. Yes. Naively, but it doesn't matter because you wouldn't have taken any of the actions if you didn't naively or not naively believe that there was a chance in hell that this was accessible to you. And my bet is that you had no freaking idea where that belief would have taken you. Even a year forward from that, 2 years forward, getting the goosebumps again, like you didn't know. And so I'm curious about you. You went for it. You called out at university. You're like, I'm going for it. There's something more. I want freedom. I believe in me. And then what happened? How did you bridge the gap between, not the mechanics, but I really want to hear your mindset, your heart set. Like, how did you bridge the gap? The light and the shadow. Don't be shy. Between that kid and then being like, oh my God, I'm 23 and now there's $1 million. What happened? What happened?
So it was funny because the exact same thing that happened when I started in the job happened to me in the university. Because And then I thought to myself, oh my God, am I just a quitter? Like, am I someone I can't persevere through anything? I started to doubt myself because I got in one year and everything was taking off for me. So I was growing my audience on social media. I had a fitness business, okay? I had quite literally spent an entire year writing this one fitness program. And back in the day, right, it wasn't quite how things are today. But if you had an audience and you had something that was good that people wanted, then you could sell these low ticket products, right? Like, so I was selling these ebooks for what, $40, $50, $200, just thousands, selling thousands of them, thousands. And I remember being in my dorm room of university, like, what is this, a waste of time? Because I just went to my accounting lecture and I didn't think, oh my gosh, it has to pay tax. I just didn't think about it. Because I don't know, how am I going to know this? And then I phoned my dad right after, and after I went to this lecture, and he said, well, why don't you go and ask the guy about it? Like, how can you start it? Like, the tax thing, right? The company, whatever. So I went to the guy the next time, the teacher, and I asked him, and he turns and he's like, Lauren, that's a good question for Google. And I was like, what? You're the one who is teaching me business. I'm the only one in the class who has the business. And I'm like, okay, I'm out of this thing. So basically, I tried to continue. I failed my exam, and that was just like the clear sign from the universe. I should not be in this thing. I should be focusing on the business. But here's what happened, right? I was quite literally obsessed. But I wasn't obsessed with making money. I was obsessed with making a post every day. That was it. I made this one commitment to myself. I'm gonna post every day, no matter what. And for me back then, it was Instagram. Obsessed. And then I started on YouTube as well, 2 videos a week, I think it was. And no matter what, it would happen. And so one time I even stayed up all night for 24 hours before I had an editor. And by the way, I'm not an all-nighter person. Like, I will never do this in my life except this one time. Or if when I was younger, having a sleepover with my friends, you know? But I had this video, I edited it, I finished at 10 p.m. and my whole computer crashes. So I had to do it all again. And I'd already told people that the video would go up the next day. So I'm not going to miss that. I already made the commitment. And I read that book by, I think it's the Atomic Habits book, where he talks about making a decision one time and then you don't have to make it again. And it just seemed like an easy option for me because I'm actually quite naturally a lazy person. Like, if I want to just chill, like, and be lazy, I will, and that's fine, and I don't care. But I had to make those constraints in my life because otherwise I would allow how I felt in the moment to guide me. I think entrepreneurs are innately very emotional people. I see this as well in the business owners that we work with. And so if you don't set those constraints and those parameters for yourself, then in the moment you always have to make the decision. But that's why every day in the beginning of the day, such a simple thing, but I'd write down the 3 things I'll do today. No matter what, I'll do them. And usually it's actually only one, but sometimes it's 3, right? And so I get those things done. And if I get it done in 30 minutes, then cool. Like, I actually had that today. And then I had this on my calendar, and that was really it. And then I just watched some YouTube videos, and I got some new ideas, and I listened to some podcasts, and I went to the gym, and it was very relaxing, actually. But I needed to get those. For me, it was one other thing today other than this. And so with that constraint in mind, like, those were the habits that I set for myself about 10 years ago that then allowed me to actually get done what I needed to get done. Because back then, I didn't understand, like, operations, right? I didn't understand about hiring people. I didn't even know that with what I was doing back then, which was just social media content, I didn't know that that could be a business. Like, quite literally, I had no idea. I would always hear this concept, like, every coach has a coach. And I classed myself back then as a fitness coach. And so I hired a fitness coach because I thought that's what they meant. But I realized they meant, like, a business coach, a mindset coach, like, it wasn't, like, all these different areas. I just didn't think about it. And so then I went to this mastermind. This guy invited me, and I heard this guy called, I forgot his name, Joel Marion, right? And he was basically talking about this ad stuff. And I had no idea what his ads, right? I didn't understand. And he was talking essentially, like, the way that I will explain it now, is the economics behind business. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love economics. And by the way, I love economics. I'm obsessed with this thing. all things to do with it. And so as soon as he explained it in that mindset, I was like getting goosebumps everywhere in my body, even when I say it now, because I remembered that this is how I can actually build something bigger. So anyway, made some mistakes, just wasted tons of money, got stoned a few times. Again, all my fault note, because I was trying to shortcut getting the outcome that I wanted, which is to have a successful business. And so I was basically just trusting anybody who told me they could help me, like anyone. But what I didn't realize is, like, by the way, at this time, I'm 19, 20. I'm like a naive young girl on the internet. They can see I've got a big following. Back then 100K followers was like 1 million today. It was different because not as many people were doing it. You probably remember back in the day, having 50K followers, you're quite literally a celebrity. And so, man, it was an interesting time, but that's also when I started to really understand, okay, in order for me to actually be successful, I need to focus on what I called back then personal development. I went crazy on personal development. Nothing to do with spirituality, nothing. In fact, I used to think like spirituality, like I would kind of poo-poo on it. Because again, I was out of alignment ultimately with my true self. And so only in the last few years, I would say, I really began to like open myself up to, yeah, quite literally, like I would say, open myself up to spirituality and different ways of thinking. Because I think before, especially growing up in the UK, I don't know if you have a lot of clients from like the UK, I think it's an even harder concept to tap into because of the constraints of how society is right there. USA is much more open-minded, I would say, which I love that. And so that was a bit of a nutshell, but this is my hair I could go into.
So there's a few things that I'm hearing here. From a business perspective, what I'm hearing is the word constraint continues to come up, which is super interesting because the way that you're using it feels to me as if you have been using it as an advantage. So I'm going to ask you in a moment to elaborate on that. But before I do, I'm hearing constraint. I'm also hearing you saying, I was obsessed. And what really stood out to me is you said, I was obsessed, not with the money, but I was obsessed with posting. I was obsessed with showing up and I was committed to it and I was consistent with it. And it's really important to highlight these pieces because even when people are asking the questions, why am I not making more money? Or there's like this, I notice it when clients come to me and there's this just too much obsession with the money and there isn't enough conversation about the impact and what it is that they actually want to be doing that lights them up. What I notice and what I coach people through is their center of gravity is off. Their center of gravity is around me, my safety, the money I want, what I want, that egocentric piece, which again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a part of the evolution, right? Like there's some people, we all have to, for us to really create exponential success and exponential impact, we're going to need to cross this bridge. Like it's inevitable. It's just a matter of when, but I want to call it out because what you're showing is that no, actually that center of gravity, like when people are like, how were you so young? Like, how did you do that? What I see is that that center of gravity for you was bang on, like pretty soon in your life for reasons that we don't know. Part of it is nurture, part of it is nature. For some people, it comes 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. But what's really important to highlight, because I see this in so many of my clients, is that the moment their center of gravity shifts from like ego, me, I need, into what can I create, the moment there's that boom, that shift in center of gravity, that's when the client starts to experience really big success. That's the moment when they start to generate the money they didn't even imagine they could have and it touching the lives of the people. And the biggest irony of that moment that I watch it all the time is that when that happens, they actually forget about the likes. They forget about that revenue coming in. They forget about the number. They forget about the validation. And the moment they forget, they're so absorbed, so focused on actually being in service, on posting the post, on doing it consistently, on doing the best job that they can, that they forget that thing that a phase behind, a step behind in their evolution, they were so obsessed with. They become obsessed with the thing that matters the most. And that's what I'm hearing here is that very early, you got this. You got this code earlier on in your career and you really were able to see, oh, actually, I'm obsessed with this, with just creating content and sharing my message and sharing what I have to do. I'm going to do it even if my computer crashes, even if, like, how many people just give up? The second that there's a challenge, the second that there's an obstacle, how many people give up? I'm really sorry, I'm really passionate. I'm like, I'm really happy about this because, I work with so many people at your levels. And what I wish that everyone could see when we are in that call behind the scenes, I wish that everybody could see this. And this is part of the reason why we're having this conversation out loud, which is that you're looking at this person's, whatever money they made and whatever stage they spoke on and whatever thing they've achieved on the outside. But what you're not seeing is the consistency, the passion, the commitment, the self-constraining, and the ability to show up and build productive habits over time, which again, most people won't do. They will fall off the track. They will allow their instant desire for instant gratification to take over. They will allow their ego to trump their sense of self and service, and so on. And the story goes on and on and on. There's 1,001 stories why people aren't creating the level of success that they want to create. But what's really important to highlight here is what it actually takes to create the level of success that you want to create. So on that note, I know I've heard you talk about constraints and I love your viewpoint on it. I love the way that you see the act of constraint to actually be an asset when it comes to business building. So I love if you could share, I have multiple questions, but first tell us about constraints and then I've got another one for you.
So when you first decide what life you want and how you want to feel, and the way I frame it is, if I'm looking back 5 years, how do I want to be proud, right? So if I put those constraints in place, then that ultimately limits your actions, right? Because tomorrow I could go and join a certain company, sell a certain product, and make a ton of money because I'm very good at sales. I could do that. I can get the leads, I can make the sales. But if it's not in alignment with my values, if the client fulfillment in what I'm selling is not also good, right? Then of course I'm not going to feel good about that. That's one constraint. Second constraint, I don't want to live in just one place. I want to be able to travel the world. So that didn't just define how I run my business, but also like the life partner that I choose. That's one thing. The other thing is, okay, well, I also want to stay fit and healthy. I don't want to get fat. I don't want to like have unhealthy habits. I really also am not a huge fan of drinking alcohol, like sometimes every now and then, but it's not really my thing. So I'm not going to change my behaviors to make friends. That's another constraint. And so if they're not cool with that, then probably not going to be a good friend for me, right? So there's just a few things that I put in place. And I think ultimately the other way that I would define this word in the context that we're talking about it here, not business, but just this context, is values, really. I mean, what are your values? Because unless you know your values, you can't really make decisions, because then you make the decisions that feel like they're the right thing to do in the moment. But everything comes down to values. For example, at the moment, right now, I'll talk business for a sec, but we hired somebody new, right, for operations, right? And she understands our values. So she understands how to speak to clients. So when she's talking about a payments problem with a client's card, she's not just going to say, update your card information. She's going to say, hey, Sally, I've heard that you've had a really great success with us. Congrats on achieving this, this, and this. I just wanted to let you know that we had a bit of an issue with your card. And so, please, like, let's get on a call so we can sort it out, right? Because one of the things is the values that we have and that I personally have is like making people feel special, making people feel understood, making them feel like they're in the right place. Because, like, again, maybe this is from my childhood, but I didn't feel like that, right? I always felt like I'm different, right? And so I was trying to then be somebody that I'm not. And so that then goes into all of your other areas of your life, right? And so when it comes to like constraints in the way that I'm thinking in, for example, like business, I think you can come up with much better solutions, because let's just say you had like an unlimited budget, right? You see this a lot with VC. I mean, how many companies have I foolishly invested in that then goes to nothing because they'd raise a bunch of VC money and it's not like their own money, and maybe then it's a business, and I'm foolishly making these decisions like 5 years ago before I really understood actually how to invest properly. And then they just blow all the cash because they didn't have the cash constraint. Whereas if you have a cash constraint, then you have to get resourceful. And if you're resourceful as a business owner, then that goes through to the rest of your team. But I just quickly want to go back to one point that you mentioned earlier, because I think there are two different phases, and probably 10 more that I just don't yet know about because I haven't reached that stage yet. But the first gratification comes from, as you said, like it's not just all about like what you want to do in the moment, etc. But then the second thing is that deferred gratification in that the success has to come through the people
Mm,
and not through yourself.
mm,
And so then not only are you then being in service of like your audience or whatever, but then also your team. And that's been a big challenge for me actually. Because I think when you're someone who's like very good at certain things, and you could just get in there and just do it in that moment, then being able to feel the satisfaction, not when you do that thing, but when somebody else does that thing, that's a challenging shift. Because then it becomes resentful if you have to do the thing to get the results, because you want to empower the person to do the thing to get the results. And so that's a shift that I had to go through over the last 3 or 4 years.
mm,
And even still now, I have to remind myself of it every day, because at the end of the day, every time I do an action that somebody else should be taking ownership of, I'm actually taking away from their growth. And I didn't used to understand that concept at all before. Whereas now, what ends up happening is when I take responsibility and I just go ahead and do it, which I do sometimes still now because, maybe it's Sunday and I see something and I just quickly fix it. Then subconsciously they think, well, Lauren's just going to do it next time. So I'm not going to bother doing it. And I'm then taking away that power. And if you want to build people on your team who are taking ownership, then you have to quite literally empower them to make decisions, to be the one who's responsible, because otherwise it just all comes falling back on you. So that I think is a second shift. From there, all of the rest, I don't yet know, but it's actually really like 10 times more rewarding when you're successful in that and achieving that, because you then empower someone to get to the next level in their career as well. And it's not just about you being good at a thing, but it's about you training and coaching someone to be good at a thing, which then they can achieve a goal. And also, there's massive ripples effects on that
mm,
too. So,
mm. I love that. So, a few things here. The first is going back to that piece to wrap up that piece around constraints. I remember you said when we were in London, you said business is a game of constraints. And that really blew my mind. I had not heard that. It hadn't entered my brain, that thought. And even through this explanation, I get it even deeper of when we're looking at business and building a successful business, it's not just about understanding, as visionaries, like we're out the butt with ideas. There's never gonna not be an idea and another new thing we want to do and more that we want to build and the next level and the next level and the next level. But a really important skill set that I believe and can see contributed to your success is the ability to be like, where am I constrained? If I have 3 projects that I wanna run and I have this level of budget, I don't have 2x. I don't have the budget that, Joe over there has to, like, create the seven-figure launch in this moment. That's not the budget I have. I don't have that team. I don't have those assets. And getting super
mhm.
real on these are the assets I have now. This is the team I have now. Here is, the budget that I have now. And yes, we wanna stretch ourselves and get uncomfortable and, stretch beyond that because that's where growth is. But there also needs to be a reality check, a real reality check. And I remember doing this like when I hired a contractor to come in and just install dashboards, metrics, data, which as a creative, look, I come from a highly like I consider myself an artist who's learning how to do business. Even I even get uncomfortable sometimes when people refer to me as an entrepreneur. I'm like, oh, I'm an artist. I'm just understanding the game of business, okay? And as somebody who's creative, and I coach so many people who are highly creative and highly successful in that, it's scary to be like, let's put some numbers in here. Let's look at literally how much does it cost every time my team posts something for me? Like, what is the literal number on that? And then you're like, oh my God, how did I end up spending over 6 figures just on social media marketing? Like, what happened? Where's the ROI? And there's a lot of things that we need to figure out in our journey as business owners. But I love this because it's practical. It's understanding what are your limitations. If you have a 200K a year business, you have a certain level of constraints that somebody who's running a 7+ figure business does not have. And the opposite is also true. If it's you and one team member, and then a 7-figure business owner has 10 team members, you have a level of agility that that person doesn't have. So it's really important to understand what are your constraints and how do you build within those constraints while also stepping beyond that comfort zone where the growth is. So that's the first piece. The second piece of what you said that I really love and I adore it because it's something that is such deeply woven into the fabric of the work that I do with people is value work. This is like so irritatingly simple. I've been teaching this for 8 years. You know those things where I don't know if you have these in your business where you've been talking about this thing, it just evolves, but it's literally been the same conversation. I've been having the same conversations, whether it's been through my PR work in the past, brand story, helping people tell their story and put it out there, or even, more recently, like how to grow your business, how to feel better inside your business, how to create more meaning and fulfillment in your life. It doesn't matter. Like the importance of knowing what your values are, it's like the entire filter through which you perceive reality is what your core values are. And when people are unconscious of those core values, what will happen is that they will start to make decisions in their business, in their life, from that naive but not so great state of, oh yeah, like, I'm just going to hire this person because the price is right and they look like they have a really good resume. But then if you don't know, if you don't have an alignment in values and that person goes and does their job and then they're not doing it in a way that is in alignment to your values, you're going to be pissed. But it's not a thing you train. It's a thing you hire right away, right off the bat. And I see it all the time as well when, in hiring decisions or when it comes to, a client who really highly values time freedom and then they're creating this program that gives them no time. And it's like, dude, this program is literally not in alignment with the thing that matters to you the most. So it's such an important step to get super, super clear on what your core values are and which ones are the non negotiables, like, can't touch this. And when you are clear on those values, which is, the quote unquote inner work, then you bring that and you because one way or another, the values are there. They're either conscious or they're
Mhm.
unconscious. One way or another, you are operating through the filter of your values. The empowerment is, are you doing it through values are you aware what those values are? Or are you just letting them kind of, hold your strings in the back end? And then you're looking around wondering why you're, in this mess or why you're not hiring the right people, why you're not making the money you want to make. So I love that because it's such a critical part, I think, of just being a human 101. And the last thing that you shared that I really resonate with is this piece around giving the power also to the people. And there's this thing I read recently about how the best leaders are the ones who can turn other people into leaders. And it's not about you calling all the shots and you doing all the things and you being the face of your company and running everything in the background, but it's about the ability to train and to empower other people to actually rise in their own power, to make their own decisions, and to lead within the microcosm that they have within your company, which makes sense because then, by extension of that, you would also be doing that with your clients, which again makes sense why you have the business that you have. Because if you be out there, like, knowing what your values are, acting in accordance to your values, and you be out there empowering people to step up in their role, and you be out there like helping your clients step up into their power so they're less reliant on you, so your team is less codependent on you and they're more reliant on themselves. What that is to me is called sovereignty. And we like that because when we become sovereign and we encourage other people to become sovereign and we stand for sovereignty, I mean, that's freedom in its highest form. And it allows us to show up to work and our mission and know that whatever it is that we're doing and whoever it is that we're being is a vote towards sovereignty. And I think that's really sexy and really cool. And my question for you, the next question is, you've talked about, now that we're in the topic of sovereignty and freedom, you said something really interesting early on. You said something along the lines of, I started doing personal development work, but I hadn't yet started, I hadn't gone down the path of spirituality. And I'm really interested in how you define, like, what is that differentiation of what is personal development work? Where does that end? And what is actually spirituality to you? And what happened in your career and in your trajectory of your story that went from, oh, personal development, I got to do this. Because it sounds like it was like even a mental thing, like, I got to do this, I got to check this off my list. I can even feel the energetics shifting, even as you were speaking that. And then there was like a moment where you're like, huh, who am I really? Phew. And something happened inside of you. And I've seen it because I've been watching you, sis. And I have seen something shift inside of you. So we're getting in there.
I see. Yeah, no, I feel you. Like, to me, the personal development piece is the I, and then the spirituality piece is the we. And so
Woo!
I don't
Woo!
necessarily
Woo!
know.
I've got chills. That's good. Okay, go ahead.
I don't. I don't even. I don't know what shifted because I was at this event in. Oh, I can't remember what year it was, but I'm pretty sure I was either 20 or 21 years old. I was at this event and they were talking about like chakras or whatever, right? And they were like saying all this stuff on the stage, and I like looked at my friend and we looked at each other and we just go like, let's bounce because we just thought we were too cool for this, right? And so I would say that's how I was back then. I was doing so much personal development, so much. And I actually would say that I was very consistent with it. I was like ticking off all the boxes. I was on my A game, like I was performing really, really well. And I was very, very happy, right? Don't get me wrong, I was. But the thing is that, man, how did I even learn that there is more? I can't even tell you what happened. I just don't know. I think it's just a natural evolution that to get to a next level in your life and in always feeling really, really good and always wanting to improve yourself. I think you stumble across, wait, there is definitely more than just always, learning. I don't even know how to put it into words, right? And so I think the one shift that I made, which kind of somehow started it all, this is so simple, but instead of doing like positive affirmations, I am healthy, right? I started saying like we in the beginning of it. And as soon as I did that, I don't remember what happened. I think it's somehow in the subconscious mind. I just started to understand people better. I somehow started to realize like, wait, this is it was even unexplainable to me. Okay. And I think that's sort of the beauty of it. And so I don't know even how to answer the question. I think I'm still definitely earlier on in my journey than, of course, a lot of people. But my supposed answer is really that is the difference between those two things.
Mm, mm. So this brought up a few things as I was listening. There was Muhammad Ali, the famous boxer. Um, I remember this anecdote of them saying he was at like talking to a group of students, and they said, "Give us a poem, Muhammad, give us a poem." And he looked up and he said, "Me, we." And that was the poem. Even now, I get chills just repeating it. What you're touching on at whatever stage of it you are is actually really, really important. And it's something that I have experienced within myself. And it's something that somehow, I don't know how or why, but life continues to bring me in front of people who are going through exactly that transition. And it's that piece around what I was sharing before, different languaging around the center of gravity, where there comes a point, that when I was speaking about that ego internal and then it's about service, it's different words, same concept. The center of gravity
Mm-hmm.
moves, it has to move from me to we. When we are in that space, what I have found in my experience, when we are working on ourselves, and one of the things that Tony Robbins says, I don't know if I'm misquoting him, but I remember I was at his business mastery a few years ago, and he was like, business is a spiritual game. If you're in business, like you're here to spiritually evolve. And knowing that, and knowing what I know from my teachings in within the world of spirituality and the mentorship that I've received around that in my own experience, is that there comes a moment that we're doing the work and the positive affirmations, and we're working on ourselves, and we're working on our trauma, and we're working on being healthier physically and emotional releasing and breath work and the things, the smorgasbord of how can I become a better person. And for those people who are actually doing the work, and I have to highlight, underline, circle that one, because there's people that get stuck in the loop and of self-development for like decades, and they just keep looping in the same events, the same workshops, and not actually making significant changes in their lives. We're not talking about those people. Those people are in all high likelihood not the ones that made it this far into this episode. I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to you who's listening, because I know that you are into this conversation because you are someone who is committed to not just your personal growth, but your evolution. And what I mean by evolution is your soul's evolution, which if we buy into that whole thing that we are all one, that we're ultimately one, we're ultimately all connected. The soul's evolution is that journey back to God, back to source, oneness, as you wish to call it, love, you know? And so if we are on the evolutionary path, as I can see that you are, it is inevitable that we're going to hit that point where me must transmute into we. And the biggest
Mm-hmm.
irony that I have found of making that transition is, even when I was, again, different words, same story, is that when we go from me to we, what we have the capacity and potentiality to create in our life, in our business, whether it's meaning, impact, influence, finances, is exponentially larger, exponentially more opportunities available, more doors open than we could ever, 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 ever force our way into or strategize our way into when we are operating from me. It's the game changer. And
Mm-hmm.
again, in that vein of what does it actually take to create that level of success? The way that, again, I've been observing, I've been watching you. You would not be sitting here in front of me if I didn't believe that you were operating under a certain level of values, integrity, growth, evolution. And that's what I see is that shift of actually connecting to what we is. And I can see that that's your journey now. It's going deeper into exploring the very large landscape of what is available, possible inside of we, you know? And so I'd be
Okay.
curious because, there's something that really surprised, when I was in your event in London, something that really surprised me. And I shared this with you, but I'll share it again now. We were in a room of over 70 plus entrepreneurs. And I remember there was, multiple chances for people to do sharings and panels. And there was this moment where there was a panel and one of the guys came up and, they were being asked, these people were being asked, like, oh, what did it take to like grow your program from, like 5 figures to multi 5 figures? And what did it take basically for you to create a certain level of monetary success of impact, helping this many people making this much money? And I was shocked when this guy started to talk about, well, I did the inner work. I cleaned up the trauma. I've been working with my frequency. I've been cleaning up my vibration. And when he said that, it was like popcorn popped. Because then the next woman next to him was like, I did the inner work. I'm cleaning up my vibration. And the woman next to him was like, I worked on my trauma. I worked on my shit. And I was like, oh my God. I was not expecting this. It was like a pop-up box, like it was a little like, I was not expecting to come in. I thought we were going to talk about funnels and like structure, and which we did, and systems, which we did. But then it's like, everyone's like, clean up, do the trauma work, like do the personal work, like raise your vibration, like be in that frequency, in the right frequency. And I'm like, oh, Lauren, Ms. Lauren over here is attracting this, whether she knows it or not. She is like a freaking magnet. What is going on over here? And so I want to zoom in on that. You're giggling. Like, I'm calling you out. Like, I want to zoom in on that. Miss, multi-seven-figure business owner who's like been successful for almost a decade and doing these things, getting on these big stages, talking to these big people. But like, you are behind the scenes, like you calling in these people that are like, we got to do the inner work. We got to clean our stuff up. So I would love to hear from you. What does that mean to you? Like, what is the correlation, like, from somebody who's been doing this? What is the correlation that you've seen? Like, shed light on this for us. You are a successful business owner. And but what happened? What inner work needed to happen? At what point did you realize, if I keep going like this, no matter how much money I make, it's not going to make me feel better, because there's a point you hit where you're like, I'm done being me. Now it's we. So can you zoom us in and tell us about your journey there?
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that because my team was super shocked, but it was just a normal conversation for me. I think I'm actually like a bit of a closet sort of spiritual person, if I'm really honest. Like, so when I was younger, when I was like 5, right,
Mhm.
I would always tell my mum, like, and we were joking about this when we were chatting on WhatsApp, like, I would literally always tell my mum, like, I'm psychic, right? I would just have this banter with her. And the weirdest thing happened, right? I was I must have been 7. And I told you earlier, okay, my brother is disabled, right? So quite literally, like, he doesn't really speak that often, okay? And so when he was younger, he would kind of be a bit chattery, but he really doesn't have proper conversations, okay? And so it was so weird. We were at Disney World in Florida, and there's this one ride, like the Eskimo ride or something. I don't know the name. Sorry for my Disney fan lovers or whatever. But there's this one ride, and it goes backwards, okay? But we walked into the park. Like, there is no way he could have known. There is absolutely 0% chance. And he goes, Mommy, I want to go on a ride that goes backwards. Okay? It was so weird. And so in this moment, I was like, absolutely bamboozled. But at the same time, I was also like, he clearly knows stuff that's going on in the real world that he cannot possibly know. Like, it's happened dozens of times with him. Okay? And, like, I swear to God, it destroyed my understanding of reality to the point where I just knew that there must be more. And so when I was younger, didn't really think much of it. Obviously, was focused on being normal or whatever. And so then as I began to get older, there's like weird things will happen, okay? And so then I kind of started to research, because my natural instinct is always to research stuff. Like, I will research something until I've been through the whole document, been through the book, any book or resource that's mentioned in the book or thing. I'll take that name, I'll read through that, I'll go through this, I will go until it's done, okay, until I can't do anymore. And so then I was reading, I think it was something pretty basic book, like The Surrender Experiment or something, or the one before that, Michael Singer. I really like these books, okay? And I was reading this and I was like, yeah, it just made sense to me, right? And I think since I was younger, I think I was like naturally just kind of doing whatever I needed to do in order to keep my environment like, good vibes, right? Like, as they would say, in a positive frequency, in the one where I feel like I can be creative and in flow. Like, I would always chase flow. But I think I was always, up until a few years ago, like masking it with these more scientific phrases, let's call it like that. Because when I was about 16 or 15, I was having so many panic attacks. So many. And I would always research what is going on in my body when I'm having panic attacks. And only once I understood that could I then relax enough for it to pass, and then I got out of that phase in my life. And so then I heard this saying, which is like, faith and fear cannot coexist. Because I was always very fearful about my anxiety, right? My anxiety wasn't because of anything, it was because of the anxiety. It was this massive spiral, okay? And I even have these notes in like the back of my deck here. If ever I'm feeling a bit anxious, it literally says adding stress to stress or adding fear to fear. Basically, that's what keeps you sensitized, right? I've read this in my book, so I always see it. And then it's like, without fear, our body quickly heals its sensitized state. And so as soon as I understood, okay, well, if faith and fear can't coexist, like, what is faith? What is that? What does it mean? And then it's okay, it's like letting go. Okay, but like, how do I trust? What do I trust? Who am I trusting? Because I'm not trusting myself, because if I'm trying to trust myself and I'm in fear, then what's happening here? And so I just had so many unanswered questions, and then what do you do? What do? You can't. You can't do more. You have to relax. And so that's where I'm at with all of it. And so to answer your question and to your point, with regards to the clients that we serve and people in that room specifically who were put there in that room, why were they put there? Why are we having this conversation now? Okay. Well, I don't know. And I don't think you need to know, right? I think it's just because of how I run things. People who are also running things that way, they see that, because it takes like to like, right? You have to know to know. And so I think just purely through values, through maybe operating on that certain frequency, people see it. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I just don't think we can know. And I think as soon as I stop trying to know everything, well, everything becomes more enjoyable, because then you're just more chilling out about it, right? But not to the point where it's too chill, because I do think you can go too far the other way. And that's where you can get into these spiraling questions of like, what is this? What is this life? Like, what is the point? Right? I can also be in this rabbit hole like that. Then when I was about 13, I remember being in philosophy class and they're asking, what's the meaning of life? And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. Like, I'm very, very obsessive over things. I told you earlier. Like, and so I'll go in this rabbit hole trying to figure it out. And I couldn't figure it out. But then that's how some people, they can get stuck there. And so you can't get stuck there as well, because then you get like, some people get seriously depressed because of that. And that's also a problem. But for me, I was always finding it more interesting rather than anything else. But things like, okay, what's going to happen when we're going to die, right? I think about this every day, all the time. And I'm thinking about it constantly. Like, always comes up to the top of my mind. I don't know why. Why it's always been like that since I was young. So it was very interesting to have that happen in person. Is exactly what everyone in that room needed. It was just perfect. And I can't explain how that happened, but it just did. And it was beautiful.
So a couple of things. The first is there's a quote that one of my teachers always says that I love, and it's one of those things, when someone says something and you just keep growing into the understanding of the thing they're saying. It's like it's the same
Yeah.
phrase, but you kind of grow into it. And the
Yes.
phrase is it is only through the not knowing that we can access the all knowing. And when I get really in my head,
Ooh.
yeah, it's good. When I get really in my head, when I'm trying to figure stuff out, when I'm trying to figure out
Mm.
how something works, why it's doing it that way, it's been really helpful to remember that when I let go and I trust and I practice my
Mm.
faith and I stop trying to know and I actually come into acceptance and surrender of not knowing, that's the moment when the answer drops in. Because that is when I get access, I get plugged into infinite intelligence. Because I cannot get there, cannot access that field of intelligence by thinking about it. I cannot access it
Mhm.
by trying to go fetch for an answer. It can only be accessed when we are in a surrendered state and we are in flow. And we are just in that space of receiving, then the answers come. Then the all
Mhm.
knowing drops in. And it's like a knowing in our body. It's just a knowing that you can't explain. So, what I love about your share through that lens is what I'm seeing is that you are dropping into almost like an unaware state of like, oh, I'm in the not knowing, which is an amazing thing, you know? And I think what's really important, and even about the people that were in that room, I have been in the past years, I've been traveling the world. I've been in a lot of communities. I've been in a lot of quote unquote, spent time in a lot of quote unquote conscious communities. And one of the things that I've been very exhausted by is seeing the amount of communities that are just so obsessed with spirituality and talking about it and doing the workshops and drinking the cacao ceremony and the breathwork thing and this and this and that and how what is the next thing I need to do to heal myself? What's the next plant ceremony? Whatever. Boom, boom, boom. That they lose touch. They lose touch with what, at least to me, spirituality is in the first place,
Mm.
which is exactly what we've been talking about this entire time. It's acting in integrity with your values. It's caring about the we instead of only hyper focusing on the me. It's about taking action on things that light you up, that you're passionate about, that feel of your highest excitement, instead of obsessing about the results you're going to get if you take those actions, aka the money, the validation, whatever, and this has been a really big lesson for me, especially in the past year, as I've in my own evolutionary journey have come into deeper contact with what is spirituality to me actually. What does it mean to me? Because it's beyond, it's not the ceremony and it's not the workshop, it's something more. And what do all those enlightened people do that don't have a six-figure budget to go to all these workshops and all these like all these retreats and all these, what are they doing? Are they just doomed for life? Like, are they just not going to evolve? And it's like this really, I had a friend of mine, this statement, this statement she said, it was like, she was talking to me how she met a unconsciously conscious man. She met like, we were in the age of spiritual, lover boys, and I won't go too deep into this one. This is a different topic for a different time, but in the age of just like a lot of lost people like floating around trying a bunch of things, she was always like dating like the super spiritual shamanic guys with the hair and they're beating the drums and they're like the archetype of a spiritual dude. And then she was like, I'm done. And she did her work and she attracted a good man. And I remember being in a call with her and she said, this is an unconsciously conscious man. I'm like, what does that mean? And she said, he's raised in a good family. He treats me well. He does not know what chakras are. He's not like talking to me about, the mysteries of the universe, but he listens. He's present with me. He shows up. He's kind. He's got a good heart. He's just like a stand-up guy. And at the time, I've done a lot of work since then, which is also documented in the podcast. I was like, wait, they make them like that? What do you mean? Hold up. And that really inspired me and set me down an entire rabbit hole of realizing not only how many unconsciously conscious people, guys there are, but people. And how the whole stereotype of you need to do this and be this and where's your like feather necklace, Lauren? Like, are you spiritual? Like, what's going on? Where's your long flowy white dress? I'm realizing, no, no. That's not it. A lot of times that's a show. A lot of times it's the same kind of show as when you go into a conference room and someone's like dressed to the T in a Dolce and Gabbana suit that they had to take out a loan to be there so that they could show up and look like, I don't know if people actually do this these days, but you get the example where it's not any different than the show that we put on the internet. It's not any different than the show that we put on, because ultimately it comes down to not being who we are authentically, not showing up in our authentically self. And I believe the highest form of spirituality is having the courage to claim who we really are, the values, the shadows, the desires, the mission, all the things, and having the courage to claim this is who I am. It's a different level of grounded spirituality. So and that's what I love about you. It's that grounded spirituality. And sure, you might have a journey and you might need to learn more around where the chakras are and then what the thing is and like where in the universe and what happens when we die. Like, we've got time for that, But ultimately, it's also about those daily actions. And I would go as far to say that same consistency that's applied in posting on Instagram, it's that consistency of like, what are my values today? Am I going to act in according to my values? What's my practice? Am I going to keep up with it? Because that's the real evolution. At least those are my 2 cents.
No, I love it. I think as well, it's the curiosity, right? And like, I think finding the things that you're innately curious has always led me to very interesting places. I mean, because that makes sense, right? If you're curious about it, it's interesting. And I think a lot of people, they do things like you mentioned, like, okay, let's call the chakras an example. Okay, like I get this now. It makes sense to me. You can also see the science side of it too, right? You can look at both sides. You can look at the physical and you can look at the spiritual. Okay, it makes sense, like logically. But then if you feel like you need to do something because that's what others are doing, that is actually probably a thing to pinpoint, because I'll give you an example. Like, I was in Colombia and quite literally like every week people are eating mushrooms there all the time because spirituality, right? That's what they say. Oh yeah, like it's my spiritual practice. But what I noticed, and they were also taking a lot of like ayahuasca ceremonies, like very often, very often. And I noticed, oh, this is like a mask. It's clearly a mask, because it was like the frequency was like so often that it was kind of like, instead of going out and drinking, it's like, let's go out and drink the ayahuasca. And it was very fascinating to me, because like, when you speak to people and you can tell they have like something that they're hiding from, right? Or something that they're running away from. And I noticed that and I was like, but that's not what it's meant to be. right? Like it's not how it's meant to be used like that. And so I do also think there's a danger, as you mentioned, going to the workshops all the time, doing the same thing. But if you don't actually spend time alone, by yourself, thinking through your thoughts, writing about it, saying it out loud, having the difficult conversations, like actually what I would define it as like processing, as it were. If you don't spend time on the processing of the things, but instead you're always in that sort of like doing of the practice, as it were, then I think that's where you can fall into those sort of again, it's let's say like coping mechanisms or like spirals, and then you're never actually getting what it's meant to be, right? So I just think that was also something that was quite important because we're on this topic. Yeah, I highlight the concept of the unconscious competence. I think that's actually maybe a bit accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, like just being that without
Yeah.
having to talk about it or teach about it or like make a big deal out of it, you know? And that's really like the people that if you even look the most that I know, most spiritually enlightened people, you can't tell them. It's just the only way you can tell them in a crowd is by the frequency they emanate. It's by like they shine, they
Mhm.
radiate from that inner peace,
That's
that
true.
love, the way they speak to people, the way they treat people, but it has nothing to do with it. They are not wearing the big feather crowns and the huge like tribal necklaces. And again, no shame, like no hate. I have a really cool tribal necklace as well, but it's really about how we wear it is very important. It's not about what we wear, it's how we wear it. And I don't mean that just in the outfit sense, but it's in the ways that we present ourselves, in the ways that we show up in business. So with all of that being said, to bring the spirituality talk into more practical, I'm going to ask you a question that I'm going to ask it. I think it's an annoying question, but for some reason I want to ask it. So let's just play with it, which is that
Yes.
I'm like, I don't know why I want to ask it, but I feel like you've got an answer, even if it's a non-answer, which is
Okay.
when
Great.
someone's listening here and they've just listened to everything we've talked about spirituality, values, constraints, the kind of mindset that you hold. I'm sure people learned a lot about you and how you think. And there's probably been some light bulb moments of, oh, okay, that's how she got to where she is. Oh, okay. But if we were to summarize it, and if I were to say, Lauren, if you were to give some keys, some takeaways to people who are listening, who are like, yo, I want to build a successful business. Maybe they're listening and they're like, I want to get to seven figures and I want to have impact and I want to do it the way we talked about from the me to we. This is good to me. The values, yep, I'm on board. The we, I'm on board. I'm ready to do things in a sustainable way. To that person who's listening and that's like, yeah, but okay, we talked about a lot of cool stuff, but like, what can I take away with me if I really want to make this happen? What would you say to them?
Well, there's the like practical business step by step piece, and then there's also like the internal piece. So which
Can we
one
do
should I
both?
start with? Or
Can we do outer inner?
yeah, okay. Well, on the inner side of things, I think the first thing is like at the end of the day, we don't have any control over anything. Nothing. Quite literally nothing. If you actually zoom out far enough. And so if you know that, then nothing that you do is really going to be that bad anyway. So it's all going to work out. It will, and it absolutely does. Because if it doesn't, then it doesn't, and it didn't. So you can't do anything about it. That's just one thing to think about, okay? Just to have in the back of your mind. Because as someone as like logical as me, to understand that and to say those words, I hope it sticks. Okay. Because I would say I'm like a quite very logical person. Um, and then on the inner side as well, I mean, I do think, at least to me, this was my journey. Like, I had to go through the personal development work in order to get to the business success supposedly that I have, right? And that involves a few key things that I think are fundamentally more important than others. Again, my perspective, everyone has a different opinion, but this is my perspective. The people who you're around are going to shape the way you think more than anything else. The things you listen to would also be included in that. So the fact that you're listening to this is fantastic because you're working on yourself, developing yourself, and putting things into your mind which are positive and which are going to empower you to get to the next level, however you define that. Now, how many people have constant negativity blipping and blopping all around them? Okay, whether that's from just TV screens or radios in the car, or if it's from people around them. I personally just made this decision that is like, if something is innately negative, I'm not trying to like be absolutely deluded and not live in the real world, but I just don't need to know. Because if you go back, like even 200 years ago, you don't hear the negative things that are happening thousands of miles away. You find out what's happening in your town. And that's about the level of which you hear the problems. And so nowadays you can hear so much negativity going on all like quite literally any day of the year. You can type what's the worst thing that's happened in the world today and what's the best thing that's happened, and you're gonna find something every day. No matter what. And the way in which it affects you depends on maybe you've got some like personal history relating to whatever's going on. Maybe there's some family connection, whatever it is. And if you know that you're the type of person who that's going to shape your mood, which I believe subconsciously it affects everyone, unless you're like, I don't know, an actual narcissist or something, it will affect you. So like, I just don't want other things to be in control of how I feel. I want to choose that myself. So I'll give you an example. Like I used to have to go to the gym at some ungodly hour in the morning, really, really early. And it was always having the news. And so it would be in front of me where I was doing my warm up. I could literally not escape it. It was on both sides. I could close my eyes or whatever. So I just went on this random website called like Positive News or something. And I would just read that while that thing was in front of me to just get any negativity gone. Because if I glance at it for a split second, you kind of read it, you know what I mean? So that's one thing. People as well. I mean, I genuinely believe that like the life partner that you have is gonna be like I think it's like the biggest life hack of all is to be with someone, as you said earlier, with like that grounded, positive energy. Because if they're bringing that negativity towards you or just poo-pooing on your ideas and your thoughts and everything, then of course that's going to be a constraint to your growth. So that's like a very serious decision. And I think a lot of people don't make uh logical decisions when they're finding a partner. And so I think actually thinking through the values piece, obviously if somebody's already in a relationship, okay, different story. But if you're trying to meet someone right now, then of course you need to really, really consider because this person aligning with my values. So those are the like internal things that I think actually make a much bigger difference than we probably think that they do. And I'll say one final thing else, which is the environment that you're in, while it can have like a very big impact on how you feel in a moment, changing it doesn't change what's happening in your head. Okay. So I know some people who have like quite literally moved country to get in a more positive vibe, different frequency. And it's really good for like a few months, maybe even a year or two. But then, well, you're still left with yourself at the end of the day. So if you don't spend your time on the inner stuff, then it's going to be very confronting a few years down the line when you just moved your entire life to another country and nothing else changed. I see that a lot because like I'm traveling a lot all the time, and so I meet a lot of other people who are also traveling, and I think a lot of them are escaping from something. This you have to do that stuff inside of you. And so then on the business side, unless you have any questions about that.
Just to comment, I lived in the land of people who are escaping from something, and I was in Bali for many years, and it's like everybody's either running away from or like escaping from or trying to find themselves. That's basically the narrative. So I completely agree with this piece that people as it relates to the business part before you dive into the practical, that a lot what I have found as well with my clients is there's so like no matter there's some people where it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how many people are following you. It doesn't matter like how much quote unquote external success. I've worked with extremely successful people, and when there's that feeling of something's missing inside of me, there's nothing practical that can ever fill that void until you fill that void using the inner, doing the inner work. But yeah, like if someone's doesn't have their values straight, if they're in toxic relationships that are draining them, whether it's with their partner or their team or friendships, if they are not taking care of themselves, if they're not doing what makes them feel most alive and what feeds their soul, it's like a hungry ghost. There's nothing. There's no seven-figure business. There's no like feature on Forbes. There's no, 1 million followers. There's nothing that can ever bridge that gap until you bridge that gap. And I think that's really important as we dive into the practicalities of business, is to understand that that base needs to be there, because when we are happy with ourselves and when we are in alignment with ourselves, anywhere we are in the world, whatever it is, there's going to be that joy, that happiness is generated on the inside. So yeah, love that.
Yeah, so true. And on the business side, I mean, we could potentially talk all day, so maybe we'll do it another time. But I think that the really simple answer is um, limiting distractions, if I'm being 100% real, because anything can work. And if other people have made it work, it works. And so if it's not working for you, it's not that it doesn't work. It's just that, like, oftentimes a bad wordman always means his tools, right? And so I just see like most people, because like really, if you think about it, getting to seven figures, I remember the first time I heard of this concept and I thought it was a scam. Like I genuinely thought it was like, this must be a scam. Like there's no way that you can take this type of business. This is when I had a fitness business. I was like, there's no way you can take this business to seven figures. I quite literally saw this ad and I was like, screw this guy, he's a scammer. And that's because I didn't believe myself that it was possible. Because I didn't have the internal belief to understand that that thing is possible, it wasn't possible. And so I didn't begin then. I didn't begin taking the actions to make it possible. And so then what happens is if you don't believe that's possible, then you'll start doing this and that and this and that, all these different things. But I actually hired this woman. She was working for me. She sold her business. It was a sales training company. She sold it and she came and worked for us. And for a while, she's a great friend now. She's back doing her own thing. But she told me one time, like, every strategy works if you stick to it for long enough. It's like, damn, that's so true. Well, like, and then she would go on to say, like, yeah, sticking to one strategy is better than hopping from strategy to strategy. And I see this a lot, like in the clients that we serve. Like it's very common on that sort of like low seven figures or on the brink of 6 to 7. Like they'll start one thing and then they'll stop and then they'll do another thing and then they'll start it and they'll get some traction and then they'll think that it's done because they got a little bit of traction. But it's always like, no, first we validate it, then we stabilize it, then we systematize it, then we delegate it, and then we scale it. And then it's like a very methodical process, but that's like one thing, right? And so imagine there's all the different areas of the business which that needs to be done within. And so I'll leave it with that because otherwise we'll literally speak for hours more. But hopefully that gives some help to somebody.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
love that. I love that there's that piece around the inner game, which is how you need to feel and what it is that infrastructure that needs to be created in your internal landscape. And then, you have the psychology, and one of the things that Tony Robbins also says, it's 80% psychology, 20% strategy. And then there's what you said, there's the psychology, and then there's an actual methodology. There's a way of looking, oh, does this work? Great. Now that it's working, let's scale it, or systematize it, and that sequence that you said, there's an actual sequence, there's a way. And then when you're committed and you're applying that strategy and you're being consistent with it and you're doing it again and again with passion and all of the ingredients that we've talked about since the beginning, then things work. So it's not just one thing. It's not just one secret like hack answer, but it's actually a mixture of all these different things. But it's not like, when we put it this way, it doesn't feel overwhelming. At least it doesn't feel it's very clear to me. Internal work, this, and that. We've just talked about it. Great. Get your 80% in. you're good. Now let's look at the 20%. Let's look at the strategy. Stick to one strategy. There is a process. This is what it looks like. And boom, shalat. Like, here we go. Boom, fire. So the hard part is getting up, doing the habit, maintaining alignment, maintaining your passion. If you get disconnected, getting plugged back in, like that's the part when I work with, my most successful clients and I see what they're doing and what they're generating and what they're creating. It's like the thing that they're waking up being like, oh my gosh, it's the piece around, oh crap, I just fell out of my alignment and I don't feel good about what I'm doing anymore. It's not the actual Facebook ad not working. That might be the symptom. But then when you scale back to look back, it's because they're not in alignment with the thing that's the ad is promoting. So there's a whole psychology and intricacy that I have found as well in my work of why it is that people aren't taking the action they need to be taking and why they are stuck, especially when they've reached a certain level of success. But I love this because it is a very unconventional formula that, again, makes complete sense to me. So thank you so much. And yeah, I would say based on that, we can leave people with that. That is a wrap. So thank you so much. That was deep. We went in. We covered a lot of bases. I'm really proud of us. And yeah, if my last question for you, it's a double-edged question is, first, is there, now that we are completing and getting to the end, is there anything, someone that's listening and that just went through all of that, is there anything that you want to leave them with? And followed by, for those of you listening who want to find Lauren, where can we find you? And that's all going to be linked in the show notes, but let us know here as well.
So for the second question, maybe it's an easier one to answer. Just my name all over social media, Lauren Tickner. So I'm pretty easy to find. And then leaving with something, I think, man, there are so many ways that we could go with this, but ultimately, I think the question is like, who really are you? And that's probably the question I would leave it with.
I like it. That was short, sweet, and potent. Lauren, leaving it up into the mystery. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for letting me poke around in the inner workings of your mind. It's one of my kinks. It's just going into brilliant people's brains and just pulling all the threads and seeing how they all tie together and make really cool answers. We know that. But yeah, thank you for letting me into your world. And I'm sure everyone who's listening and including your audience, is going to have a really refreshing and new little peephole into your beautiful universe. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me. This is amazing. I love it. And what you're doing is such important stuff. So it's great to be here.
Beautiful. Well, to those of you who are listening, if you want to share with us, with me and Lauren, what you most loved about this episode, don't be shy. Take a screenshot. Let us know. Tag us on the Instagrams, on the social media. And we look forward to also learning more from you and what you loved about today. All right, Lauren, I will see you very soon. Thank you, beautiful humans, for tuning in to today's episode of It's Not What You Think. If you loved what you received today, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts as it helps us reach even more amazing listeners like you. If we aren't already connected on social media, come receive even more tips and inspiration by following me on Instagram at Celine DaCosta or visiting my website at CelineDaCosta.com. After listening to this episode, I invite you to take a few moments to reflect. What stood out to you? What were your key takeaways or breakthroughs? And if there was one action step you could take from this, what would it be? Thank you again for joining me on this journey. I'm sending you so much love, and I can't wait to connect in the next episode. Until then, keep sharing your unique gifts and living out your most magical life.